Hello everybody, I am Professor Chandana Goswami from Tezpur University, and I will be talking about planning, the first function of management. This is a sequel to Introduction of Management, which has already been published. Let us begin with the necessity for planning. All business organizations, including non-governmental organizations, they have to operate, survive and progress in a highly dynamic economy where change is the rule and way of life. These organizations have to exist in an economy which is changing almost every day, so they will have to operate under those circumstances, not only operate but also survive, and not only survive, also grow, that is the progress part. Therefore, we need to understand what is planning all about and how do we go about doing it. Planning is the process of bridging the gap from where we are to where we want to go. So, there is a time element out here. Today is time t. We have to visualize where we would like to be in the future, that is t plus n years, and accordingly chart out a course of action. Planning is said to be all pervasive, which means that all organizations, whether it is a business organization or a governmental organization, non-governmental organization, the defense services, hospitals, charitable organizations, including our own homes, we all need planning. That is why it is said to be all pervasive. Planning means selecting a mission and objectives and the actions to achieve them. We will talk about more about mission in the next few slides, but as of now, please understand mission as a general statement of how to achieve the vision of the organization. Objectives are supposed to be specific. They cannot be vague. They have to be quantifiable, which means we should be able to measure them. And they are a time-sensitive statement of what is going to be achieved and when it will be achieved. So, a specific objective could be, I want a 10% growth rate, fine, and that is measurable, that is quantifiable. But I must also say, when do I want it? Do I want it in 1 month? Do I want this growth in 1 year, or do I want it in 3 years? When I mention the time frame, then it becomes a time sensitive statement. And once we have the objectives in mind, our next step would be to chart out those actions as to how we are going to achieve this particular objective. When we use the word plan, there is a lot of terminology which is associated with that. Vision, mission, objective, goals, strategies, policies, procedures, rules, budgets, programs. I will go through this one by one. Let's start with the vision and a mission statement. A vision statement talks about where the institution wants to be in the future. It is almost like a dream-like statement. Where do I visualize my institution to be? The mission statement talks about the purpose of existence of the institution and how to reach the future. Let me take up a hypothetical case, a hypothetical university, which I am calling it a liberal university, and I am drafting out a vision and mission statement for this. The vision statement will read something like this. Liberal university will have a transformative impact on society through education, entrepreneurship and innovation. So this is a dream-like statement. This is where I visualize the university to be in the future. The mission statement becomes a little more concrete because we say the mission of the university is to provide a transformative experience for all with respect to accessing higher education for promoting their knowledge, competitiveness and skills so as to make them capable global citizens to fill up the talent gap in different spheres of societal, scientific, technological and other areas. So as you can see, the mission statement talks of giving a transformative experience to all stakeholders via education, via promoting knowledge, competitiveness and skills so that we can create global citizens who will then have a transformative impact on the society as mentioned in the vision statement. Once the mission and vision is in place, we then move to strategies, our objectives. Let us do the objectives. These are ends towards which activity is aimed. So if I continue with the line of the vision and the mission statement, one of the objectives could be to educate and train manpower for the global requirement and more specifically for the development of the state of Assam. So if this is the objective of my hypothetical university, I will now need to frame strategies which are the long-term plans. So a strategy among the many strategies could be that I have to define what is this manpower that I am talking of. What kind of manpower am I going to educate and train? Am I going to train those people who are seeking employment, that is the youth, or am I going to train that manpower which is already in service and needs an upgradation? I have different choices for doing this education and training. Shall I use classroom training, classroom teaching, or will I go for open and distant learning, or will I go for online open courses, or shall I do trainings and workshops both on-site and off-site? These are the avenues open for me, and my hypothetical university will choose a strategy from any of these or maybe a combination of this. Once the strategies are in place, this hypothetical university will have its own policies, procedures, rules. Policies and procedures act like guides. A policy is a guide to decision making. So one of the decisions could be, shall we impart education through classroom teaching or online courses or blend both? Another decision making point could be, shall we recruit faculty from within the state or within the nation or international faculty? And once the policies are there, there are associated procedures. These procedures are guides to action. So in terms of faculty recruitment, we will have a procedure for that recruitment. In terms of student admission, we will have a admission procedure. Then there is something called rules. Rules do not give you any room for discretion. Policies and procedures did give you some amount of discretion. So these are straight do's and don'ts. So you will have admission rules, you will have academic regulations, you will have hostel rules, and so on and so forth. Up till now, you must have understood that there is a link from the vision, mission, through the strategies, objectives, policies, and they are all interlinked. We have two more words out here, budgets and programs. When any plan is made, there's finance involved out there, and therefore we have to quantify the plan. We have to talk about where the income is coming from, where the revenue is going to be generated, what is the associated cost expenditure with this program. That is termed as a budget. We also use the word programs. If you have a short-term program like the convocation in a university or a conference which is being held in the university, you will understand that it has its objectives, it will have a strategy, it will have a policy, procedure, everything including a budget built into it. So therefore, we are saying a program encompasses all of these above. Now that we have understood the different kinds of plans that may be there, we need to move on to the next phase, that is, how do we do the planning process? What exactly is done out there? So let me take you through the steps in planning. The first step is being aware of opportunities. Let me take up a business organization. If this business organization has to be aware of opportunities, it will scan the external environment as well as the internal environment and see if there is any opportunity for further growth in the business or maybe a new business. Suppose it finds that there is an opportunity for growth in the rural market. Then it will establish its objectives. For the enterprise, that is for the organization, it will say, we propose to have a 10% growth in the rural markets through our sales. And this will be within a span of 3 years. Then you have to make it into objectives for the subordinate units. A 10% growth in sales will mean that you have to increase your production by 10%. 10% increase in production will call for an increase in purchase of raw materials, storage. It will also call for an increase in the shifts that you have. If you were using 2 shifts to produce, now you will have to work on 3 shifts to produce. You will need more people, so the HR department also comes in. You will need more money to finance these activities, so the finance department also comes in. So now you can understand that these associated units will also have their own objectives. The third is developing the planning premises. This is the assumptions about the environment. We saw a growth in the rural economy, and our assumption is that this growth is going to sustain over the next 3 years. That is why we took up a 10% growth rate in sales as the organizational objective. Most people make a mistake out here because they do not focus on the planning premises. If the planning premises do not hold good, your plan is not going to succeed. Once you are done till here, you have to find out what are the different alternatives that you have for achieving this 10% growth of sales in the rural market. Each of these alternatives will have to be evaluated by doing a cost-benefit analysis, and then we will select the best out of them. Once the main plan is in place, you will need to formulate derivative plans. So these are the supporting plans that will support the basic one. So if my basic plan is 10% growth in sales in the rural market, the supporting plans will come from increase in production of 10%, increase in buying raw materials, increase in having more HR people out there, increase in finance. They become the derivative plans. And finally, everything has to be quantified. So we will have to say what is our proposed revenue from this growth, what is the associated expenditure. So then this forms the budget. So these are the steps involved in any planning process. We have a management guru, Peter Drucker, who gave us what is known as management by objective. He says that all preliminary objectives must be set at the top, and they have to be verifiable objectives. Verifiable objectives means that which can be measured. Second, he said we must clarify organizational roles. Third, set subordinates objectives. And fourth is recycle those objectives. As we have just discussed in the steps in planning, setting preliminary objectives at the top is same as setting your enterprise goals. Clarifying organizational roles is the subordinate units who is going to be involved in this. Setting subordinate objective is the individual targets that we are going to set. And fourth, recycling objectives, which means that from time to time you are supposed to do a review and see whether the targets are being met or not. If they are being met and you think you can increase the targets, you will do it. If you think they are not being met, you need to ask why it is not being met and give the additional support for that. This management by objectives has some benefits in terms of improvement in managing, clarification of organizational roles and structures. There is encouragement of personal commitment and development of effective controls. In the management by objective, one of the unique features of this is that these objectives are set after mutual consultation. You do not get a target just like that. The boss sits with the subordinate and both of them come to an agreeable target. Therefore, it encourages a lot of personal commitment. However, there are some drawbacks also. It is difficult to set goals all the time, especially when we are talking of the service sector. Second is that there is danger of inflexibility if you do not do the review process, if you do not recycle your objectives. So whatever we have discussed so far now can be put in this form of a diagram. The organization is influenced by the management styles or the work culture of the organization and also by its mission statement. The organization will scout for opportunities and threats by finding out what is its existing status today and where it would like to see itself in the future. It will also do an internal introspection by looking at its resources and finding out what is its strength and weaknesses. So on the basis of strength, weakness, opportunities, threat, that is the SWOT analysis, they will come up with alternative strategies. From there you will evaluate and choose one, then you will implement one, and then there is going to be monitoring of this implementation process. You can see the dotted lines that are coming out from the implementation and the monitor phase is the feedback that comes. This feedback is helpful for understanding what worked and what did not work, and they will help the organization in the next round of planning. So this is in short the strategic planning process. We also talked of the SWOT analysis, and using this you can form a grid which is known as the TOWS, the TOWS matrix. Strengths and weaknesses are internal to the organization, while opportunities and threats are external. All our resources can either be a strength or a weakness. Resources could be the human resources, financial resources, IT-based resources, the top management that we have. So if they are good, competent, we have enough of it, then it is our strength, else it is a weakness. Opportunities and threats come from the external environment. The threats are mostly in terms of our rival competitors, and the opportunity is a new aspect that we see, a new gap that we see which is not being covered by our competitors. If a company, if an organization has strength, it can immediately take advantage of the opportunities that are there in the market, and we call this an aggressive strategy. But if there are opportunities and the organization does not have strength, it has more of weaknesses, then the strategy would be that you work on your weaknesses, develop them so that they become strengths, then take advantage of the opportunities. If you have strengths, but then there are a lot of threats, the strategy is to be defensive. You have to ensure that your competitors do not eat into your market share. Your job would be to protect your market share. The worst position would be where an organization has weakness and there are a lot of threats in the economy. You have two options. You relinquish, you shut down your business, or you join hands with a strong competitor where you see some synergy happening out there and you can create what is known as a joint venture. Another way of deciding on your strategy is to do an industry analysis using Porter's framework. Michael Porter gave us this framework where he talks of 5 forces acting on a company at any point of time, and the forces are based on the demand and supply, the bargaining power of the competitors or the suppliers, cost advantage and product differentiation, threat of new companies, and the possibility of substitutes. The threat of new companies depends on the entry barriers. Entry barriers in terms of cost structure or the economies of scale. Bargaining power of suppliers depends on the supply and demand position, and the bargaining power of customers depends on the product differentiation as well as demand and supply. Let me explain this with the help of an example. We are all familiar with the product Amul Taza, the packaged milk. So in the central box where we say competition among companies, you have Amul Taza, you have Nestle, you have Vijaya, and many other such similar products. Bargaining power of suppliers is from the milk producers, the farmers, as well as the packagers. If the milk producers, farmers, can see that they have enough places to sell off their milk, then their bargaining power is higher. But if they do not have enough avenues for selling off the milk, then the bargaining power of Amul Taza or the company Gujarat Milk Marketing Federation Limited will be stronger. Similarly, for the packagers, the Tetra Pak that we have, if there are many buyers, then the supplier has a higher bargaining power and vice versa. Talking of the bargaining power of the customers, individuals like you and me, we do not have any bargaining power, but the wholesalers, they will have bargaining power. If they can get the similar related kind of products from many sources, their bargaining power is higher. There are substitutes to Amul Taza. Instead of having this packaged milk, you can use powdered milk and convert it into regular milk. You have condensed milk, you have bottled sweet milk, and you also have the local Dudhwala. So these are the substitutes available. Talking of threat of new companies, you have to see what is the level of entry barrier in terms of cost structure and in terms of economies of scale. The cost structure means how much of money is it going to take to set up this milk production facility, the packaged milk facility. How expensive it is. If it is very expensive, then the entry barrier is high. Second is that economies of scale. By now, Amul Taza has established itself and it produces in volumes. So therefore, the cost of production per liter is low as compared to a new entrant in the market. So therefore, these are the 5 forces which act on a company at any point of time, and based on this you can have your strategies. So the generic competitive strategies that you can have is overall cost leadership, differentiation, or a focus strategy. Let's have a look. Your company can be catering to a broad market or a narrow market. A narrow market is a niche market, it is a specialty market. A broad market is like it's meant for everyone out there. Second, your company may have an advantage either in the form of cost, that means you have a lowest cost of production, so therefore you can sell at a lower price, or you will have a differentiation advantage, which means that your product is different from the other kind of the similar products. Again, let me use an example out here. When the Dove soap first came into the market, it claimed that it was not a soap. They claimed it to be a beauty bar, and they said that it had a lot of moisturizers and less harmful chemicals and softer on the skin and all that, and it was priced very expensively. They could do that because they were trying to differentiate the product. But now over the years, you have seen that the size of the soap has also reduced, the price has also come down, so therefore they are trying to act on the cost leadership. Another example, we have heard of Johnson's baby products. When Johnson's baby products first started, it catered only for the baby market. So that's a narrow market, and they had a differentiation focus. So exclusively for a particular market. As time passed, and maybe because the baby boom stopped at one point of time, Johnson's advertisements changed, and they said what is good for the baby is good for the mother. So therefore they are now gradually trying to move towards a broad market, and the latest advertisements say that what is good for the baby is not only good for the mother, is also good for the sibling, which means that the entire family can now use a Johnson's baby soap. So therefore it's a movement towards the broad market. The point is that you don't have to be stuck in one of these boxes. It is possible that you can move through these boxes. Even if you are offering a premium product, your premium product may be very expensive, but among the other premium products, you are offering it at a lower cost. Then you are operating in a narrow market with a cost advantage. So these are the different strategies that are available for an organization. Having talked about how to create a strategy, we have to understand about how to implement a strategy effectively. So let's understand, why do strategies fail? We have done a lot of homework in creating the strategy, and yet we find that at times the strategy is not working. So what are the reasons? Some of the reasons are inadequate preparation, insufficient information, which means that your planning premises were not established correctly, goals were vague, not specific, business units were not clearly defined, therefore the subordinate roles, subordinate units, you did not define their role. Review of strategic plans not done effectively, you did not have monitoring and review from time to time. And finally, insufficient link between planning and control. So therefore, what should we do for successful implementation of strategies? Communicate properly to implementers. Strategy is made at the top level, implementation has to be at the ground level, and your ground level people has to understand the strategy exactly as you devised it. So therefore communication plays a very important role. Second, we are saying check planning premises. Remember, planning premises are the assumptions about the environment. If you can recall my example of the rural economy growing, and the assumption was that it will continue to grow for the next 3 years, we must monitor the growth. We must keep on checking whether our planning premises are still valid or not. Next, plans must reflect major goals and policies. They have to be in tune with that. We need to review our strategies regularly. We must develop contingency strategies. Contingency strategies is what if the plan fails? Do we have a backup plan? Then organizational structure must fit the planning needs. We need to emphasize on planning and implementation strategy. And finally, create a company climate that forces planning. Planning needs a lot of thinking and thinking through thoroughly. So we need to encourage that in our organizations. So with this, I come to the end of this session on planning, and I hope it has been useful for you. Thank you very much.